This video is for Logic 27A. If you have already solved part of Logic 27A, fast forward to the part that you need help with. This video will explain the entire process and strategies that you can use that will help you to figure it out. This is a really difficult puzzle. I'm not sure why the author decided to include it in the A-book. I think it should have been at least in the B-book, but let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to look at is the story. Bob, Betty, Bill, Barry, and Bertha all played musical instruments. They played the harp, guitar, accordion, flute, and trumpet. They also all participated in one other activity. They enjoyed car racing, karate, unicycling, parachuting, and racquetball. Based on the clues, match the names with their musical instruments and their other activities. Now remember, guys, if this video goes too fast for you, you can pause it, you can rewind it, you can watch it as many times as you need to. So what's kind of crazy about these clues is there's information in here that sounds like it's extra information that you don't need, but you actually do need it. And that repeating information is about when the people arrived. So we have first on stage, barely in time for the first song, too late for the first song, in the middle of the first song. So this information keeps happening in the clues, and that's what tells you it's important. It doesn't just happen one time. What's kind of crazy about these clues as well is you have to get the clues to work together. You got to combine them. If you don't combine the clues, think about the clues together as kind of one giant clue, you're not going to be able to figure this one out. So let's take a look at clue 1. The orchestra got together to play, and Betty and the car racer were the first on stage. So first of all, that tells me Betty and the car racer are two different people. So underneath Betty, I'm going to cross off car racing. Now, clue 2 is different. It says the unicyclist and the trumpet player got to their instruments barely in time for the first song. Well, that means these guys are different than Betty and the car racer because Betty and the car racer were first. I'm going to use a strategy that involves making a list to help me keep track of all the people that are here. When I make a list, I want to start with how many people are in our puzzle. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to open my notepad and make 5 spots. And as I read about people, I'm going to add them to a spot. So far I know that Betty and the car racer were first. In clue 2, it says the unicyclist and the trumpet got there barely in time for the song. So unicyclist is the third person that got there, along with the trumpet. This shows me right here in my list that Betty is not the car racer or the unicyclist or the trumpet. So let me go ahead and mark that Betty is not the car racer or the unicyclist or the trumpet. It also tells me that unicyclist and trumpet are two different people. Now let's look at the second part of this clue, which was played without the flute. There's another person, the flute, because the flute was too late for the first song. So let me go ahead and add that to my last spot, flute person. And I can see from my list that Betty is now also not the flute person. So I'm going to cross that one off. So I have all of my people somewhere on here. I know who Betty is. I don't know who these other people are, but they're all on my list at some point. I just got to figure out which people go in which spot. So let's go ahead and take a look at clue 3. Bertha came on stage in the middle of the first song and upset 3 other musicians. This is new information about time, but there's no other spots for a person. That means Bertha has to be one of these people, the car racer, the unicyclist, the trumpet, or the flute. Now we know from clue 2 that the song was played without the flute. The flute was too late. And if she was too late for the song, then that means she probably got there in the middle of it. So Bertha is our flute person. So I'm going to add Bertha next to flute. And I'm going to mark that Bertha was the flute. She was too late. So I'm going to get rid of my extra stuff so that no one else can have flute. The other thing I know is she upset 3 other people. It gives you a number like this, it's trying to help you out by telling you who's who. So I need to keep an eye out to figure out who did she upset. Luckily for us in clue 4, it tells us who she upset. She knocked into the guitar player, tripped over Barry's feet and knocked over the parachutist music stand. So I'm going to make a note down here. Bertha knocked into the guitar player. We don't know who the guitar player was. She tripped over Barry's feet, so she messed with Barry. And then she knocked over the parachutist music stand. This also tells me that these are all different people. Bertha's not the guitar player. She's not Barry, and she's not the parachutist. It also tells us that Barry's not the guitar player and not the parachutist, because it's all different people that got messed up by Bertha. Now, in clue 5, it says Bill was the only one not disturbed by Bertha. That's important. So Barry was disturbed. Bill was not disturbed. That means Betty and Bob. There's your 3 people that she messed up. So that means Betty and Bob, one of them is the guitar player, and one of them is the parachutist. We don't know who's who, and we don't have anything here about guitar player parachutist yet. We know that one of these guys is guitar, so I'm going to make a little dot, and one of these is parachutist. We just don't know who's who yet. Now let's come back to clue 5. Bill was the only one not disturbed by Bertha and smiled at the karate expert. So we know Bill is not the guitar player, because the guitar player got messed up. Bill is not the parachutist, because the parachutist got messed up. And Bill is not the karate expert, because Bill smiled at the karate expert. Now here's another clue about time. The karate expert who had been first on stage. Well, who else was first on stage? Betty and the car racer was first on stage. Well, the car racer and the karate expert can't be the same person, because those are both hobbies. That means Betty has to be the karate expert. She's the only other person who was first on stage. So let's mark off Betty as the karate expert. There we go. I'm going to add to my list, Betty was karate. So that gave me some more information about what we have going on. Now, I don't know if you'll notice, but you're going to see a breakthrough here. Bob is our parachutist. So let's go ahead and get rid of anything that's not parachute for him. And if we go back to clue 4, we figured out who Barry was. We figured out who the parachutist was. The only other person is the guitar player. Well, here's Barry. Here's the parachute. This is the only other person who got messed up. So Betty has to be the guitar player. So let's mark her off. And let's add guitar to her list. Okay, so I'm checking to make sure if there's any breakthroughs. I don't see any across the top. I don't see any across the bottom. So let's keep going with our clues. Let's look at clue 6. Barry, who played the accordion, was embarrassed by Bertha. It tells us right there, Barry played the accordion. And we already know that he was embarrassed by her. So Barry played the accordion. So I'm going to get rid of accordion for everybody. There we go. And in here, I can see that accordion isn't here yet. So we need to decide if accordion goes with car racing or unicycling. Accordion can't go with trumpet, and accordion can't go with flute. So we don't know if Barry is here or here, but we will figure it out. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at clue 7. Bob did not know how to drive a car, so we figured that out. Bob is not the car racer. And Bill played a stringed instrument. So if I look at Bill, he's only got 2 instruments left, harp and trumpet. Harp has strings, trumpet doesn't. So Bill has to be the harp, which means Bob is left to be the trumpet. Now I remember seeing trumpet player on my list. Here's trumpet. So that means this is trumpet and Bob and parachute. So we have some leftover friends. We have car racer, racquetball, let's see, unicyclist. So we kind of have to figure out that, we know that Bertha is not the car racer because the car racer is in spot 2 and Bertha's in spot 5. So if Bertha's not the car racer, whoops. And let's see, unicyclist is on there. Unicyclist is spot 3, but Bertha is spot 5. So she's not the unicyclist. That means she has to be the racquetball person. Okay, so racquetball. Now, the last people we have are Bill and Barry. One of them is the car racer. One of them is a unicyclist. We just don't know which goes where. So does car racer go with harp? Or does car racer go with accordion? Let's see if we can find something in the clues to help us figure that out. Clue 1 says the orchestra got together to play and Betty and the car racer were first on stage. So car racer is here. I'm going to color it pink so that I know that I've seen it. Unicyclist and trumpet. Here's unicyclist. I'll color unicyclist green. Trumpet player has nothing to do with Bill and Barry, so I'm going to skip that. Got to their instruments barely in time for the first song, which played without the flute. We don't need flute. Bertha came on stage in the middle of the first song and upset 3 other musicians. It has nothing to do with car racer and unicyclist. Although we know that Bill wasn't upset and Barry was. So we know that Bertha tripped over Barry's feet. So whichever, and she knocked over the parachutist music stand, and she knocked over the guitarist. So one of these people got messed up by Bertha. And the person who got messed up has to be Barry. So that might help us. Bill was the only one not disturbed by Bertha. So here's information about Bill. And he smiled at the karate expert who had been first on stage. Well, that doesn't really tell us he was first. It just tells us that he smiled at somebody who was first. Barry, who played the accordion, was embarrassed by Bertha. Bob didn't know how to drive a car, and Bill played a string instrument. So here's what I'm thinking, is that Bill wasn't disturbed, but the people who were first on stage were disturbed. So here is probably Barry, and this is probably Bill. And I'm going to confirm that really quick by checking that book based on who Bertha disturbed and who she didn't. And sure enough, Barry is the car racer and Bill is the unicyclist. So let's go ahead and add that in, that Barry is our car racer and Bill is our unicyclist. And that is how you solve this very complicated puzzle. Remember, if you need help, you can always rewind and look at it again. And if you're extra stuck, just talk to Miss Duzanne.